Let me just start by saying I do like traditional Catholicism. I actually really do. I just think it has a major problem that we're not talking about enough. Now, this is not a critique of traditional Catholicism as a spirituality. It's a critique of the movement that I believe has been birthed through the expression of traditional spirituality. Don't get me wrong, I'm into traditional Catholicism. I like Latin as a language and also for use in liturgy, and I like Latin Mass. I like traditional devotionals from saints and the prayers of the medievals. I like Romanesque and Baroque style architecture. I like Gregorian chant. I like sacred polyphony. I like altar rails. I like fiddleback vestments. I like receiving communion in a very reverent posture, like on my tongue. Like, I'm into all of it. I also see a major problem that emerges when people, and this happens a lot, people who prefer that style of spirituality label it not as a preference, but rather as the principle, as the best style of prayer, the most noble or most sacred style of prayer, and ultimately that style of prayer which is most pleasing to God. I think the problem arises when people believe that the traditional style of Catholicism is somehow more reverent and more sacred, more set apart, and therefore more pleasing to God. I'll hear traditionalist Catholics say things like, Latin is the language of the church, therefore it's the most noble, it's the most sacred, and so we as Catholics should learn that language for use in the liturgy so we can give God the best gift. Or if Mass is about offering sacrifice to the Father, and Gregorian chant is the most sacred of musics, then we should offer to God liturgy that incorporates Gregorian chant because it's the most noble gift that we can give to the Father. Now, I have 3 critiques of that view. The first is this. I think that Jesus, biblically, is far more concerned about what's going on inside the heart than the external expressions of worship. Notably, in the scriptures, he critiques the Pharisees for obeying the external practices of the law as regards washing of the dish when their hearts are impure. The second thing that I find problematic is that these folks are confusing that which is more Catholic with that which is more Roman. Think about it like this. All of the things that traditional Catholics value as that which is most reverent are Roman. Latin is Roman. Romanesque art and architecture is Roman. Gregorian chant is Roman. These things are of a certain cultural time and place. That time and place is ancient Rome. And because they were present in ancient Rome, they were incorporated or birthed into the sacred liturgy in the time of ancient Rome or Byzantium. And as a result, Catholics use them in their worship. And when the church spread westward, those cultural expressions came with them. But I think it's ironic because from the earliest days of the church, there have always been other cultural expressions and other spiritualities that have been accepted by the Catholic Church. An example of this is the Chaldean Catholic Church. The Chaldean Catholics have been around as long as the Roman Catholics, maybe even longer, and they have no Latin, they have no Gregorian chant. They don't have Romanesque architecture or art. And I would be hard-pressed to find a traditional Catholic who would talk to a Chaldean Catholic and say, you need to use more Latin because it's the language of the church and therefore it's the most noble. Or you need to use Gregorian chant because it's the most noble of music. The Chaldean Catholic would be like, homie, what are you talking about? Our church has been martyred from the very beginning. We are a small but proud denomination of Catholicism. We believe everything the Catholic Church teaches to be true. We're obedient to the Pope of Rome. But we are not Roman. We are Catholic. And I think God likes us that way. And finally, I think this view leads to a spiritual pride. When you view your preferred style of spirituality as the best, as the supreme, it starts out as a pride in that which is our heritage, but it can very quickly become a critique and judgment over anybody who doesn't adhere to that style. And I see this practically. Anybody who would suggest that guitar and praise and worship might be something that could be used in the liturgy, in a lot of circles in the modern young male Catholic Church, are met with hostility and distrust and judgment, and almost a desire to suppress or oppress that idea, as if praise and worship were somehow irreverent or not pleasing to God. What's funny is if these exact same people went and visited the church in Africa or in South America, where the numbers are actually booming, their traditional style of liturgy would be nowhere to be found, but there'd be lots of people practicing their faith in a style familiar with their culture. So I love traditional Catholicism. I practice a lot of its disciplines myself, but I kind of found 3 ground rules that I think could be useful as young people in the Catholic Church moving forward if we're going to be traditionally Catholic. The first is not to treat traditional Catholicism as a superior spirituality. It may be best for you, but it may not be for somebody else. Secondly, this perspective is only possible if we recognize that the gospel is Jesus and his teachings and adherence to them. It is not a cultural expression. And thirdly, there's room for everyone at the table. Roman culture is not that which makes us universal. Repentance and belief in Jesus and his teachings are what make us universal as a church. As a last note, you may find this interesting. I kind of see the divide between the traditional church and the more evangelical or modern or contemporary or charismatic sides of the church. I see that divide as almost an icon of a divorce, because you have the traditional style, which is more masculine. It's more structured, it's more ordered, it's focused on austerity and discipline, and then you have the other side, which is more feminine. The charismatic or the evangelical or the modern, which is less concerned with structures and rules and is more energetic and free-flowy and maybe a little more wild, maybe a little more heart-focused, maybe a little bit more emotional. And I see distrust from that wing of the church of the traditionalists, but I also see on the traditionalist side a genuine desire to suppress and even stamp out the spiritual expressions that are more evangelical among Catholics. And I think that's authoritarian, which is the masculine temptation, is to dominate and to overpower. And I think it's a real temptation that we as a church need to resist. But let me know what you think. I could just be pontificating and have no idea what I'm talking about. And I know that I have a lot to learn. So please share your thoughts with me in the comments. Until next time, this is Church on Offense. Peace.